Good morning, everyone. My name is Solène Collin, and on behalf of LuxFlag, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the next session of the LuxFlag Sustainable Investment Week. I'm pleased to introduce this session today of Future Investment Incentives hosted by ADA. ADA, Appui au Développement Autonome, is an expert in inclusive finance and a driver in partnership and innovation. For that, I'm pleased we have with us today Axel de Ville, who is Director in Strategy and Innovation at ADA. Axel, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Solène. Thank everyone. Thank you, LuxFlag, for inviting us as an NGO in this investment sector, financial sector event. I'm very happy, but also a bit concerned. Happy because recently I noticed that almost every week, almost every day, we have an event, an article about green finance. We talk about EU taxonomy, ESG criteria, responsible investment, impact investment. And we have seen even at the opening session, there is a real interest and confirmed interest from the political players, from financial sector players, and from individuals that, yes, there is an interest for ESG and responsible investment, sustainable investment. So I'm happy. It has been 20 years I'm working in the microfinance sector, also linking with the investment sector. And I think, okay, things are moving. Good step. And I profoundly think that it's not just a trendy, fleeting topic. It's not just a trend, momentum. I think it's a movement that will really last for long. It's a profound shift in the society, in the values, in the ways people are thinking. But what I also noticed is that when we talk about sustainable investment, everybody has a sort of different idea. And in order to be a bit more focused, let me keep my presentation focusing on impact investing, which is a small part of what we call today sustainable investments. And then I will use a definition. The definition is provided, has been set up by the Global Impact Investing Network, which is an international network gathering many players in the impact investing area. And it's a reference, it is recognized by the industry. And they say that impact investments are investments made with the intention to generate positive, measurable social and environmental impact alongside a financial return. There should be the intention, it should be measurable, it should be measurable, and we need a positive impact. These are three key elements. At the same time, it's a bit theoretic, it's a bit complex as a definition. So let me take an example. And I will use a fund that I know well for many years, which is the Luxembourg Microfinance and Development Fund, LMDF. It's a registered fund offering debt to microfinance institutions in developing countries, which in turn provide very small credits to unbanked people, allowing them to develop their economic activity. By investing in such a fund, I have the intention to generate a positive impact, a positive social impact in favor of unbanked population. But the intention is not enough. It's important to be sure and to be able to measure the impact. It's good to think or to have the intention that these poor people will increase their revenue. But I need to make sure that as an impact investment fund, we need to measure the social impact and ensure the financial return. Then we can talk about impact investment. I took the example of microfinance, but you have impact investment in many other sectors and at much larger scale. renewable energy, health, forestry, biodiversity, education, water, etc., etc. You have big players like Traders Bank, Bamboo Capital Partners, Symbiotics, Acumen Fund, and many others that are showing the way for already 15, 20, 25 years. Now that I've clarified what impact investing is, I would like to share my personal experience with the emergence of microfinance as an impact investment market niche during the last 15 years. And then I will share my vision for the coming 10 years. From the past, I considered 3 major lessons that we learned from the emergence of microfinance as an impact investment market niche. The first one is standardization of performance measurement criteria. For microfinance, measuring financial performance of the investees is quite logical. But in the microfinance industry, what we had also is that we had a very proactive movement from all the players to set up social and environmental performance criteria. A lot of efforts have been made by all microfinance industry players, including financial institutions, microfinance institutions, investors, regulators, academics, NGOs, etc., etc. It was a sort of 10-year process to come out with performance standards that are recognized by the industry and that are now used by most of the players. Here is the visualization of such standards, which has been set up by SPTF, it's the Social Performance Task Force, gathering all these actors, and Cerise, a French NGO. Such standardization is essential. First, to allow benchmarking between players. Second, to promote transparency. And very important, to allow impact measurement. The second lessons learned from all that process, from microfinance, is the multi-dimension of performance measurement. And again, we see on this graph that when we look at impact measurement, we need to consider all the dimensions of it. We need to be as exhaustive as possible while remaining practically feasible. So when we look at these standards that are used by the industry, it covers social strategy of the investees, of the different players. It covers the client protection level. It covers responsible growth and returns. It covers environment performance management and so on. There are 7 categories that have been set up, within which you have several criteria and so on to go deeper. What is important is that when you look at performance, you need to have the big picture. You cannot just look at the performance on one specific aspect. The third lesson I learned is that you need to consider impact along the whole investment chain. This is crucial to ensure that your investment have a real impact also on the ground. If you miss one step, the whole investment chain is useless because you won't have the impact. Let me take one example of how impact investing can improve the lives of very vulnerable people and at the same time show the vulnerability and the dependency they have in some cases. Therefore, I will use an example of a lady I met. It was years ago. I was visiting Peru because we were thinking about investing in a microfinance institution. And part of the due diligence process is to visit the investee, the microfinance institution, and also the underlying clients. So Maria, sorry for the picture, I mean, it's just an illustration because I don't have I couldn't find her real picture. But let's use that picture to illustrate the case of Maria, a lady of 50 years old. She was living in a very small house made of wood, and she had a sewing workshop behind it. I was impressed when she was starting to explain me how she developed her business, calculating margins, choosing the providers to have better prices, selecting the staff, saving for future investments, equipment, and so on, and so on, and so on. And on top of that, she was very proud when she told me, oh, and you know, since 1 year now, I'm exporting part of my products, sweaters, in Germany. I have a better margin, better income. And at the end, she told me, oh, do you want to buy a sweater? I said, oh, yep, I will do, for my kids. So I chose one, I paid, and I asked for a receipt. And then I was a bit surprised. She gave me a pen and a paper, and she told me, please, write it yourself, I cannot write. And that's, one example, about 15, 20 years ago, I understood the importance of analyzing the investment chain right to the bottom. That lady was fully dependent on the relationship with the credit officer of the microfinance institution. And this is where client protection, which is one criteria of impact measurement, is really critical. And so, in order to have in mind or to be able to really consider the impact, you have to choose to consider it in the whole investment chain. You have to make sure that also on the ground, the intention of the investor is really taking place. So to summarize this 15 years back, standardization, multi-dimension, and investment chain are the 3 lessons we have learned. And I would like to share that with you because today, with the emergence, with the movement towards ESG, I think that experience might be useful for several of you. Indeed, we have a move now, and the figures are shown, by many actors. A few years ago, impact investment was still considered as a very, very, very small niche, even, not a market niche. As shown on the graph, coming from a recent study from Tameo. Tameo is an impact fund solution company based in Geneva. They issued a study recently to show the evolution of impact investment. Out of the global asset under management, and the figures, I know that's probably 2020, so it's moving further, you have part of it, about 30%, represented by sustainable finance, sustainable investments, which gather all what we call today ESG investments. 35 trillion. And at the bottom, you have impact investing, which is a small part of it. And the illustration is not representative in the sense that impact investing is even smaller than sustainable investments. And when we see that, okay, ESG investment represent about 30% today, this is great. And taking ESG criteria into consideration within the investment process and reporting on it might be very good. But I think it doesn't mean that there is a positive impact. Let me just take one example. If you invest massively in eucalyptus plantations, it might be reported as a positive contribution to climate and gas emission. But if you had to destroy existing forests to do so, then it is a nightmare in terms of biodiversity. And this is a problem. And this is why I say ESG is not enough. It's a good step, but it's not enough, because in some cases, it might be even negative. And this is why I'm concerned. And this is the difference I consider between impact investing and ESG investing. Impact investment represents 700 billion USD today. It's still very small, but I think it represents something. And what I say is that it definitely should be a source of inspiration for the whole industry. As we see on the graph coming from the website of LuxFlag, we see the evolution of the number of labeled funds. And this is great. This is confirming the interest, the evolution from the industry. And it's also something I noticed when I was discussing with several financial experts in the last 4 or 5 years. I noticed a radical change. I will take 2 examples. When I was asking to a private banker, are individuals investors? asking for sustainable investment products. Up to 3-4 years ago, the answer was no, no, almost never. I was a bit disappointed because I was in that impact investment industry. I was trying to push the microfinance investment funds I was working for. And now, today, when you ask the same question to the same people, they say, yeah, increasingly, clients are asking for that. And the problem is that we are not ready for an answer. We don't have a lot of answer to propose. The same when we were asking individual investor, what is the reason for your investment? 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was always the same. I mean, return, financial return. But today, we have investors, an increasing number of investors saying, no, I'm valuing the impact. I want to know what is done with my money. I want a report to explain what my money is used for. And I think I see that as a huge, a profound shift in terms of mindset, in terms of value within the society. I don't know if it's a sort of collateral effect of the pandemic. People had time to think about it. I don't know if it's because of the Fridays for Future movement who provide some inspiration. And I would be interested to have your feedback on that question. But let me first share a few thoughts, a few visions for the future regarding impact investing. Based on my experience, I will try to share how I see the evolution of impact investing in the coming 10 years. And I might be a bit ambitious and a bit optimistic because I'm usually optimistic. But definitely I see a strong change in perceptions and values within the society. And I will then say that the current trend will intensify. It's not just the momentum, it's not just the short-term situation. The society will ask more efforts to move towards impact investment. And there are 3 elements that we might consider. First, people pay less attention to what they are earning and more to what they are doing. The second is that more and more clients are requesting impact investments, are requesting their fund managers to give them practical examples. And the third element is regulatory framework, which is pushing the industry. And we see it now with the EU taxonomy and so on. It just put a lot of pressure on the industry. But I think we should not wait that regulation to push us. I think it's time to move. And the way I see it, I won't say 10 years, maybe 20. But the dream I have is that impact investing will become the new mainstream finance, because I don't see any alternative. But we need to ensure that that growth and that interest, the trend that we see on the graph, is made in a sustainable manner. And therefore, we need to use standards to be rigorous in the way we're working. So if I were a fund manager today, I would really start to take impact investing very seriously. And not only ESG. It's a good step. I'm not criticizing, but not enough. I think it's too late to think ESG. You need today to think impact investing, because this is what will be needed within 5-10 years. You will be forced to do that. So if I were a fund manager, I would first define and adopt a long-term strategy. How long-term? This is difficult for the financial sector, I know. But please, try it. Make sure that in your long-term strategy, you are integrating impact within the whole investment chain. You will tell me, oh, it costs a lot. Initially, yes. But if you have standards, it doesn't cost that much. If there are tools within the industry, it's manageable. It's integrable. You can integrate these costs in your process. A second element, when you took that seriously, is to adopt rigorous performance measurement standards. Don't just develop your own methodology and then you market it. Your own methodology and a good marketing strategy, you think you will make it. I don't think so. you need to refer to very, recognized standards. There are players even here in Luxembourg. Knock on the door of the GIIN internationally, GIIN, the Global Impact Investing Network. But here in Luxembourg, knock on the door of the Social Performance Task Force. They have an office here. Knock on the door of Impact, fund manager here. They are setting up a lot of impact investing funds. They are based in Luxembourg. Knock on the door on the list. They are involved in impact investing, providing all the analysis and all the input regarding the environment and so on. So use existing players, existing tools in order to really integrate the standards that will drive you. Don't wait for the regulation to push you. Just use these standards to drive you. And the third element, if you want to make it seriously, is to make sure that you have a strong impact investment offer for your clients. If you don't have that, you will not remain attractive. So I think if you don't adopt a long-term strategy, rigorous standards, and a strong offer, you might enter the sustainable investment market too fast. It's too late, not deep enough. This will result in a vicious circle. You will reduce your credibility. You will increase your reputational risk. If you increase your reputational risk, that will affect your return. You will need to integrate that risk in the pricing. You will be pushed by evolving regulation, and you will run to be compliant. That will also have a cost. And then your return will be affected. And if you don't have credibility and you have a low return, then you will lose your comparative advantage. You will be lost. You will be out of market. So I know I'm a bit optimistic, but what I've seen with the microfinance example is that it made sense to push for it for years. And I think that, just to conclude, that there is no alternative. It's time to move. Don't wait for the future crisis. Don't wait to be pushed or obliged or forced to do it. Just consider impact investing seriously. Thank you. I'm very open to be challenged and to have questions on that.
Thank you very much, Axel. Are there any questions in the audience?
I know it's time for lunch, but we can take a few minutes.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Just a question from me. With regard to the NGO you are working for, EDA, how does EDA position into the evolution of the impact investing industry? What role do you want to play there, please?
Good question. I mean, as an NGO, we are not investing ourselves, but I will take the example of our involvement in the emergence of these standards. As an NGO, we were part of the discussion. We facilitate the link with the field, and we are supporting a lot of underlying investees to integrate these standards, to improve their way of doing things. Just example, in the past, we promote financial ratings among the microfinance industry. We promoted social ratings among the microfinance industry, just to facilitate investees' identification by investment funds. We also, initiated the Luxembourg Microfinance and Development Fund, which is a very, I would say, social impact funds, but just to show the way, just to make one, to facilitate the emergence of initiatives in that sense. And that's, we are now moving also because we are having projects in the forest industry, always in developing countries, but forest industry, in access to basic services, education, water, etc. All these topics are topics that are, increasing interest, and also where there are opportunities for investments. And our role as an NGO might be to link investors with credible actors, and also to facilitate and to strengthen, I would say, more the ground players in order to be ready for impact investors.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'm François. I'm Impact Investor. Thanks for the good presentation. Question for you on what you think is the cost of impact investing, meaning the delta between non-impact and impact for an investor who wants to go from ESG, let's say, to impact investing. Is it zero? Is it something? What do you think should be the benchmark and expectations?
I think what I know is that initially, when you need to move and enter into that specific activity, it has a cost. As soon as you are in and you use standards and so on, you integrate it. If you don't do anything, I think you will have a negative cost in the future. But and the studies that have been made is that the cost between impact and non-impact, there is an additional cost at the beginning, but as soon as it's integrated, there is no additional cost. It becomes just part of your business model. And also, if there are just a couple of funds in that specific sector, it might cost a bit more because everything needs to be set up. But today, if you need to invest in a microfinance investment funds, I would say the whole value chain is organized to very easily, very quickly identify your investees, invest in it, and have a return which is definitely comparable with a non-impact investing fund return. So it's a way to, there is a cost to enter in it, definitely. One additional clarification I would like to mention is that within the impact investing world, you have some funds, positioning themselves saying, okay, I don't want to maximize the return, I want to maximize the impact as a sort of showcase and to make sure that the investor will get the money back. That's, I would say, the more impact-oriented impact funds. And at the opposite, you have many funds and big funds saying, I am an impact investing fund. I use all the impact standards. I make sure to, I ensure the impact of my fund. And at the same time, within my business model, I make sure to have a return which is close from the regular market. And what we have seen is that even during crisis, impact investment funds often do better than regular ones. Look at the pandemic. Within the microfinance industry, it was affected in some places and temporarily. But after a while, not better. A lot of players made better than the regular non-impact investing funds or non-impact investing companies.
Other question? Yeah.
Eckhard Schmidt from Ithaca. I'd like to just remember what happened some years ago with microfinance when we had all these problems of credits to Indian farmers and whatever that suicided themselves. I think this was the causing crisis that forced microfinance to change to impact financing. And I come back to your question, what happened 3 years ago? What happened 3 years ago, I think, is that everybody understood that we cannot continue like this. If not, we will destroy the whole planet with our financial industry. So my question would be, comparing to microfinance and the Indian farmers, workers, what must happen to the financial sector that they understand really deeply, profoundly, that this is not just a marketing shift that is needed, but that is essential, fundamental change that has to be done?
Yeah, good question. And impact investing is quite interesting. I'm passionate, and everything is not wonderfully working. So we made mistakes. There are some crises, and indeed within the microfinance sector, it has been talked about broadly. We had some crises in some countries and so on. And that was a sort of electroshock for the whole industry to set up these standards, to put everybody around and say, okay, these are exceptions, and that remains exceptions. That's important to say, that remains exceptions. That force the industry to move further and to set up things. And I would say that, and now if I look at the future, I say, okay, do we want to wait for a crisis a major crisis to say, okay, now let's put international standards for impact, for sustainable investments, accepted by everybody. And I will refer to the accounting standards. The accounting standards have emerged about a century ago, right after the 29 crisis. And now, I mean, in the whole economic industry, all the financial industry, accounting standards are fully integrated, fully accepted. We need, and we have the choice. Either we have a crisis that will force the industry to really change the mindset, or we have regulation that is forcing us, and we're never happy when it happens, or the industry decide to take the lead and to move in advance and to be also inspiring for the regulator instead of waiting for the regulator to force them to do that. And that's basically what I see, is that if it was so easy to switch within 4 or 5 years to really start integrating ESG, and when you see the projections, within a couple of years, 60% of investment will be ESG. Okay, this is great. Does it mean that within 4 or 5 years, the world will work better? I'm not sure. I think it will take 10, 20 years, but we need a really change in terms of mindset, and hopefully by the whole industry, financial industry. I don't see that yet. I see intentions, I see willingness, I see some players really showing the way. I don't feel the whole industry has already changed the mindset. You need to change the mindset. Don't try just to do the same but comply with the regulation. No, try to really change your process, the way your expectations, move into a long-term strategy. It's very difficult, but there is no choice now. Yeah?
Thank you. Thanks again, Axel.
Thank you.
Thanks to Hada for hosting the session. Thanks to all of you. I invite you now at our lunch in the Moudam Café. Our next session will start at 2, hosted by several associate members, LPEA, Vistra, CMS, Arcano, and focusing on SFDR in private equity, the first reality check. Thank you.